Hey everyone, this is Karen, Naturally with Karen, and today is our free live event called Your Brain. Got my cup of tea and I'm going to wait for some people to join us. Bless up, Kim, good to see you. Said grand rising to everyone. Bless up, Melissa, good to see you too. Today we're going to talk about your brain, but we're not just going to talk about it. I'm going to share from the perspective of having worked with people for a great many years. And I want to say something that is our ancient medicine up to the last few hundred years and our future medicine does not necessarily need, grand rising, does not necessarily require a white laboratory coat and all of the accoutrements. Our medicine comes from listening and observation, intuitive word sound. And I'm going to cover a little bit about your brain, not all the solutions, but I guarantee that you're going to go away from this free live event with a really nice summary, a condensation, if you will, a condensed version, not condensation, a condensed version of what I've come to know working with clients for so many years. And while the last 16 years I've been licensed and insured in Minnesota with a perfect record, offering massage and wellness, I've given a lot more than that. And what I mean by that in a very humble way is that clients came in, or I overheard them as they were getting their hair done, or of course intimate shares are happening and they would tell me about a diagnosis that they received or problems that they had at home with a child, a juvenile, a teenager, a loved one, grandpa, grandma, you name it. We all, just about all of us, have a brain. And what we hear about the brain in science is really confusing, and it makes it feel like it's the most complicated thing ever. What I'm going to show you today, after this long journey, 34 years in my adult life, coming to really understand what health is and how to break it down simply, not because people aren't intelligent, but rather because when we're not well, we're in a state of stress, and in that state of stress, we need answers more than we do need some fancy medicalese and all the fancy things. Okay. Number one on the outline, if you took down the outline that I gave you on the Naturally with Karen page or my personal page or the Opioid Addicted page, I want to welcome you, and I want to let you know that we're going to go through that outline succinctly so that you're able to keep track and have good notes. Okay. And while I do that, I might be sipping on a tea that I have today, which is a honey chai turmeric vitality. It's over at Whole Foods in Duluth, and they're two for $6, 2 boxes for $6. So it's kind of nice, especially in the wintertime, to stock up on some tea, and that can be a really nice motivator instead of grabbing that cup of coffee, which appeals to me. But I want to skip on the amount of acid that I put in for my brain. Number one, your brain is nature, and your brain is made out of all of the elements of nature. This is going to come as absolutely no surprise to most people. But your brain is fantastic. We often equate it to a computer. But when it comes to healing your brain, it's not that complex. Your brain needs high digestible bioavailable fats. And for that reason, I'm a huge proponent of a plant-based diet. In fact, I usually had this in my physical shop quite a bit too, because Kim, as you know, Dan, as you know, Melissa, you know from coming to me in person, Melissa LaFave here, and Zach Harrison. I've worked with a great deal of people. I've got this huge bucket over there of the first time wellness that people came. And I feel like probably the most luckiest person in the world, because I got to do, even though I didn't make a ton of money, I got to do what I was really honestly passionate about. And I know that in bringing what I'm going to bring to you today, you're going to have a greater renewed sense of hope, because it's going to be so much more simple. You're going to be able to advocate for yourself, and you're going to be able to feel much more crystal clear about those that you love, share time and space and coworkers, or maybe people that you work with in a facility. If you're watching this and you're on my Opioid Addicted page, or you've worked with chemically dependent people like Melissa, you have, right? Then you're going to really understand that this is a really important live stream today. So again, this is just that the molecular structure of chlorophyll, which is in all plants, right? And plants need to mature in the sun, just like you make what is called vitamin D through moving corticosteroid, which is a hormone, in your skin. But you were told the opposite. You were told, put sunscreen on. You need to protect yourself. You're probably going to burn. Well, we're going to do some future live streams about why you have moles and freckles and why you burn and why you were told this and why it's really a mythology and it's not good for you. It's not good for your brain either. So chlorophyll acts like hemoglobin in the human blood, and that's why this is here. So I'll show you this again. Okay. All righty. So your brain is nature. It's made out of everything elementally. It's got, your trace elements in your brain. The most important trace elements, which I look up for my clients, are the copper, the iron, and the zinc. I need to know that the iron is going to be like the compass for the brain. It's like the brain is kind of floating around in the cranium a little bit. It's got a watery base to it. And it needs those high-level fats like coconut oil and Brazil nuts and raw macadamia nuts especially, and pepitas or pumpkin seeds, almonds, raw almonds, which we really can't get in the United States anymore. Those kind of good bioavailable fats really nourish your brain, okay? So your brain is made out of these trace elements. Iron is like the compass for your brain. If you're living on the Mesabi Range, where I'm living right now, or even connected fairly close to it, you're living on land that's extremely high in iron. You are absorbing because you are living waters within yourself. This is what I've been relating with my clients that I love so much for 16 years in Minnesota and almost equal amount of time in California before I left Santa Cruz. Now, if your copper and zinc, which Dan, and many of my other clients know, works like a pump, they are a ratio. So when you get your HTMA, which is a hair tissue mineral analysis, and I just call it your hair test because it makes it easier. There's a ratio on there of copper and zinc, okay? If your zinc is way up like this, you're going to be much more on the left brain. You're going to be much more just tight and rigid. Your moods are going to be very different. If, on the other hand, your copper is really high on your hair test, and we can't get all these numbers and values and ranges from taking tubes and tubes and tubes of blood, and you don't need to dump out $1,000 or $1,500 with another doctor that gives you specialized testing. This one test that Dr. Watts has come up with, that I've been working with for a couple of years now, and experiencing and learning in depth how to really interpret it correctly, how to even see the emotional signature behind it, is going to give me the basis for how your brain is going to function. So if your copper is way up, like I started to say, copper is very aligned with estrogen. Zinc, on the other hand, is very aligned with progesterone. So you can see how simple it is for me to work with a client with gynecological issues like PCOS, polycystic ovarian disease or syndrome, uterine fibroids, endometriosis, women who may be thinking about undergoing a hysterectomy, but we could have taken a look at their hair test and kind of leveled everything out, because each one of your trace elements that are up in your brain are either stimulating or sedating. So this is where you're going to find out that medicating yourselves to death is probably never going to be the answer most of the time. And I have to speak this way because we live in a world that carries a great deal of liability if you butt heads with the medical industry. It's very dominant. Okay, number 2 on our list, on our outline, you have glands. Your glands have a function, which is to secrete and to move things along. If you're really congested, if like most young children that I see up here in Northeast Minnesota, you've already got a sluggish thyroid, and I can see it by the tissue swelling around your eyes, the lipoma on the back of your neck. I can see it through your skin, your hair, how cold your hands and feet are when you get on the massage table or we meet for a session. I can see it in a great many ways. I can see it in the size of your forehead and the circumference of the baby's head. Just because they've done a PKU heel stick on your infant in the hospital doesn't necessarily mean that your metabolic rate is where it should be. In fact, for most people, it's not. So your hair test is also going to tell me if you're a slow 1 to 4 or a fast 1 to 4. If you're in the fast category and you're not a young child, I really need to work with you and show you how to bring that down so that you don't burn out your light bulb. Does that make sense? Give me a thumbs up if that makes sense to you, please. And then I'll know that I'm getting through. Now, as far as your brain is concerned on category number 2, excuse me, about your glands, your hypothalamus, thank you. I know you're hearing me. Your hypothalamus is a gland. Your pituitary gland, you always talk about this as your third eye, right? And your pineal gland. If you look at a lot of the Vatican structures, you will see a pine cone, and that was a reference, or we believe it was, to the pineal gland. So you have 3 major glands in your brain. Your pituitary gland, when it comes to your brain, is an almond-sized little tiny gland in the middle of your brain. And its job and function, so to speak, is to make TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. Now, again, I'm going to break this down really simple. Most of you, when you've gone to your doctor, your Western allopathic, even your naturopath, your integrative, your functional doctors, with no disrespect to anyone, the rule of thumb for quite a while was to singularly test just your TSH, which meant we were only looking at what your pituitary gland was secreting down into your thyroid. But if you're someone who's really fond of blood serum testing, we really need to take a look at your free T3, your free T4, and your TPA, which is your thyroid antibodies. When we look at your thyroid or your TPA, your thyroid antibodies, that's going to show us whether or not you're in an autoimmune. What does that mean? That doesn't need to be as complex or as crazy mechanically thinking and speaking as it is. It just means that more than likely my client had a slowed thyroid from the time they were born. And so what do? Dan, Kim, Melissa, all of you, of which many of you I've worked with. I want to know, does mom already have a thyroid problem? Did grandma have a thyroid problem? What kind of problems is dad showing up with? And just like in my book, Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, I lay it out in plain English, not because anyone is stupid, but because we don't have time to mess around with all the Harry Potter language and taking 50 tubes of blood. If it's your thyroid, let's get you detoxed. Let's get some iodine inside of you. Let's make sure your selenium levels are up. Let's check your hair test for 100 1/4, not the end of the world, right? And let's figure out what else is brewing inside of you. Now, how did I come to this? I didn't go to a course that someone said, this is exactly what you're going to do. I learned it over 34 years. I had to be accountable because I'm a client-centered business, which means if I don't produce good for clients, I don't eat. And when you do that singularly, and that's how you eat, and you don't have a big publishing house, you need to be real with people. I want to be real. I want to be held to a standard of high integrity. Now, so your glands, before I end, you're going to see a lot of people talking about the HPP, if you want to write that down, capital letters, HPP, okay? And excuse me, the HPT and the HPA axis, HPT, hypothalamic pituitary thyroid axis. Now, that sounds really super, high-powered, but all it means is that your hypothalamus, which you may or may not find indicated as being a real gland, but it is, it's a secretor, is connected to the pituitary, the one that's the size of the almond that I told you secretes one of the major hormones, the TSH, to your thyroid, is connected to the thyroid. So hypothalamus, pituitary, thyroid, HPT axis. That's not difficult, okay? Your HPA, capital letters, HPA, you should write that down. Hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal. You see, according to Dr. Watts, because I always give credit where credit is due. He's my elder. people that have learned that I'm an elder to often credit me. And this is the way of old, okay? You don't have to go overboard on it, but it's nice to say, give thanks to the variety of people whose lives encompass bringing real medicine to you, okay? So underneath, as Dr. Watts said, who's the owner of the hair testing lab of 35 years, whom I work with and have conversations with and have permission to share this with you, says if you've got a thyroid problem, you're most likely have an adrenal issue. Why do we have adrenal issues? That's in the gland category. They sit on top of your kidneys and they're constantly pumping due to the mental stress that you're under today. Even if you've got a juvenile in there playing video games and they're, shoot to kill games and they want to get to another level, it's still a form of mental stress, right, Zach? You can give me a thumbs up. Okay. Now let's go to number 3, which is ancestral memories. This is where some people are going to go, yeah, I really love this part. And some people are going to go, totally not clinical. I'm not down with this part. But just stay with me, even if you're not down with this part, because I've got a lot more to cover, and I'm going to do it succinctly so you really get a good session here, okay? Inside of you is a living Jacob's ladder. This, this if you've ever read the Bible. And I'm not a religious person. I'm not here to talk religion or politics with anyone, so that this is absenting that, okay? If we're connected to God, to source, to nature, whatever you want to call it, celebrate it how you do it in your life. The blood that's flowing inside of you is blood from many, 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 many ancestors, okay? It contains, at the very least, in an empirical science-provided way, it provides information, but it also provides great insights to you. You have intuition inside of you, and they're intuitive intelligences. I know, Melissa, I think you were at my free school a couple years ago where I talked about intuitive intelligences, and bless up, Ruth, it's really good to see you. So you have this inside of your blood, your lymph, your DNA. When people tell you about DNA and genetic mutations, be aware that that doesn't mean that you can't repair those. It is not always the case that you cannot repair those. Of course you can. And we used to have, if you look at Luxor in Egypt, or what was formerly known as Kemet, right? You can see that we had great harmonic halls and centers where a crystalline or a marble table was laid down, and we used sound frequency, okay? So there's ancestral memories that lie inside of you. You are born from mama. And what's really important to note here that I think you should write down on your paper is that mama had a certain level of trace elements when she gave birth to you. She had a certain amount of trace elements, toxic elements, and heavy metals inside of her, which are also given to you or not given to you. So you may have mineral or trace element, same word, trace element, mineral, deficits and shortages inside of you that now we can work together through coaching, and I can help you to remedy those, okay? So if your copper is way up here, we're going to probably add in a little bit of zinc and balance you out. So now you don't, as I talk about in the section on mental health, we're going to cover a little bit more about that. Section number 4, we're going to talk about your organs. Organs do what? They produce music. They help you to sing. They help you to be vibrant. They help you to wake up and not feel depressed. If your liver is clogged, if you have fatty liver, if you've got a buildup of excess copper toxicity and storage, maybe you live in the copper up in the upper peninsula in Michigan, or you live on land, unlike the Mojave Range, that's loaded with iron, you live somewhere that the land is loaded with copper. Then that excess copper is also going to be a factor. It's going to change the dynamic of how you experience life. Can you see that maybe not everything has to do with just pulling your blood and running test after test after test and trying different medications and cutting out body organs like the game Operation? I hope that you'll be able to see that as you listen and I offer you my free gift here. Okay, your organs are musical. Your liver is the seat of anger. It is associated with the Chinese element wood. I know this because I also put in years of my life to experience and understand and study traditional Chinese medicine, just like I did East Indian or Ayurveda. Okay. Your liver, your heart, and your kidneys, they're all musical. Your kidneys are, filtering and excreting the water throughout your body. Your heart is pumping the blood. These are making the music inside of you. If you're no longer joyful and happy and making the music inside of you, chances are you probably have some toxic elements inside of you and or need to detoxify chemicals or food chemicals inside of you, which are going to open up that ability for you to be able to sing and feel joyful again. Look around you. How many people are moping and overeating and gambling and drugging themselves and smoking and vaping? We need some relief. We need real relief. We need real medicine. And a long time ago, we used to have women. It was only the job of the woman who would come and provide the medicine. But during that time, we didn't have the diseases that are now inserted. We didn't have Lyme's and rabies and polio. These are unnatural diseases that have been inserted and created, and they're harmful to us. And now, instead of our healing ourselves in very subtle ways or having our original medicine that there's a plant for everything, now over 2/3 of those plants are gone. They've disappeared off of the earth. Due to, as I studied at University of California, Santa Cruz, due to slash and burn in a great many areas like Central America that were the lungs of the planet with all of the great rainforest canopy and activity and plants, we no longer have that. But if you read a book by Paul Stamets called Mycelium Running, if you want to write that down, mycelium running, which is another word for fungi or mushrooms, so to speak, you'll see that we can actually open the opposite of Pandora's box and we can reforest the world. Okay, so I'm going to keep going here. Your organs help you to sing, okay? And they also are a big part of circulating your fluid as well as your cholesterol, which is everything to do with your ability to make hormones. How many of you are females that have gone to your gynecologist and they say, I don't know, it just seems like you have a hormone imbalance. We're going to need to put you on metformin, which is a medication because you seem to be making a lot of cysts on your ovaries. You seem to have endometriosis, which means for some reason, your menses, your immune cycle is going backwards and the blood is starting to go up and over your fallopian tubes and covering your ovaries, making what a doctor would call a chocolate cyst, which means a dried brown blood covering the cyst. And now you've got beautiful women that are crying like I did. I cured my infertility after I was diagnosed as having endometriosis and told I would never have a child. And I'll tell you one thing, one of the happiest joys of my life is working with women that still have the mechanical pieces. They still have everything gynecologically. They still have a uterus, their fallopian tubes, or at least one ovary, and we help them to get pregnant, okay? So, number 5, everything is connected. In the world, you will see that as you go out into nature and you walk in nature, you will start to connect with the birds, the sky, and the medicines that will be revealed to you, the synchronicities that will be revealed to you. If you've ever read the book series by James Redfield called The Celestine Prophecy, and I even got the child's book for my son when he was very young, so that he would understand synchronicities, which means, yes, when you're within the flow and in an optimized natural world, not one that's got 5G towers, voice to skull, everybody on medications, but a natural world, that everything that you needed if you lived your life in right relations means you do good, you do right by others, you do right by the animals, you do right by nature, you do right by yourself, then naturally the spring that comes from the music of the organs inside of you and the glands that help you to become, as the Bible says, anointed. If your glands are not working well, you cannot become anointed. So when number 5 on our outline, everything is connected. These glands, some may say your hypothalamus is a gland. Others may say technically it's not. I'm not someone that's 100% on science anymore because I've come a very long journey into understanding what I see as truth. And that means I'm very nature connected, right? So everything is connected. I have my clients get out and start walking if they possibly can. I get them on the plant-based foods. I get them on like the tea I've got here right now, okay? I teach them a little bit about the herbs that are going to work, like a client just last week, I mentioned about yellow dock and sarsaparilla, and I want to thank the Honorable Baba Dr. Sebi because he's one, and his Dr. Shook, Professor Arnold Arrett and Professor Hilton Hotema, that are people long before myself, and now all of them have joined the ancestors. Okay, so let's go into number 6, okay? As a young girl, I began by listening with the grandmothers, my maternal grandmother in particular, and I learned a lot about intuitive intelligences during a time in 1965 and 1966 when people started really staying hush. They had stayed hush for a long time. They might be considered crazy or they might be considered too out there. It might feel like they were being religiously abusive or deviant, religiously deviant, because they were not listening to themselves. They came into a much more logically driven world. So this is where a lot of the industry and systems could start to take over with, we will tell you what you have. We will tell you the medication you will take. We will tell you about yourself. And mama and grandma and great grandma and elders were no longer the medicine people. Now mama is being more and more disconnected from her own babies, which renders them much more helpless. Okay. Number 7, food. In 1984 and 1985, I was in college at West Valley College in Saratoga. It's a community college. I got my AA degree in liberal arts because I wanted to take physiological psychology and marriage and family and philosophy. And I wanted to taste a lot. I was young and I was very slowed down. I thought I had a lot of comprehension problems, but I ended up finding that I was able to completely accelerate what I call now affectionately my core processor, my brain, the processing speed of the computer. And I took a very low IQ comparatively and elevated it substantially, verified through Dan D'Allard, who's at Duluth Psychological Associates. I know that if we can do this for one person and more people, as I have with other clients, we can do this for everyone. And wouldn't it be great, instead of telling you your IQ is 140 or your IQ is 80, what if we actually started working with people before mom got pregnant, like I did with my son, and cleaned our womb, which is a book I have forthcoming? That gives us the ability to have a much higher level of intelligence, especially when there's many people involved for the benefit of the whole. So you see, we are our medicine. Okay, let's go to number 8, okay? Number 8 is the clinical way. If we go in and the doctor says you don't have a thyroid problem because I've checked your TSH and your TSH is at a 1.0. For me, my client might say, I still don't feel good. The doctor's not willing to diagnose me with a thyroid issue, but I've got brain fog. My hands and feet are cold all the time. My menses is all over the place. My moods are horrible. And I just got diagnosed with bipolar. I say, you know what, honey, you need to come in and I need to help you. It's going to take us 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 sessions, depending on you and how far we can go and how quickly we can go. But just imagine for a moment that you know you don't feel good, but you and many generations of your family have been told, it's okay, just take an antidepressant. Just take this pill. You can't sleep at night? It's okay, just take Klonopin. Klonopin is a really deadly drug that's extremely addictive. And once you plant that seed in a 14-year-old girl, which is the case for one of my clients who came to visit me and brought her granddaughter for a wellness, that feeling of how good she felt when she took Klonopin at 14 or 15 is going to stay with her forever. And she's going to remember, it's very Pavlovian, the good feeling she had when it numbed her pain, it put her to sleep, and it took away her mental distress. Why don't we really heal her from the root? Okay. Number 9, I have my outline in front of me. This is where we really start getting into the brain, a toxic brain. Why do we have a toxic brain? What is a toxic brain? You know, we certainly can hear many of the different, there's a doctor this and a doctor that all over the place. But how often do you really see medicine women that are genuinely a shaman? And a medicine woman means that she's worked the medicine with someone for many, many decades, as well as the shaman is someone who has connected to the ancestral memories. She's looked at with keen listening and deep observation, or deep listening and keen observation, I should say. And she has worked thousands of hours with people for many years, and she's become an elder. You're not a shaman at 24. You're not a shaman because you flew off and bought a $10,000 certificate. You're a shaman because you walked an unusually difficult fire journey, a road that had challenges on it that were unbelievable, and you made it through. And maybe you still have a few, which I will go over when I talk about the opiate section. A toxic brain is someone that by the time they're children, teenagers, or young adults, they're having headaches. They're having migraines. And if you follow me on Quora, you might want to write this down, Quora, Quora.com. And then you can follow me at Karen Pringle. You'll see I have nearly 2,500 answers. I have about 60,000 answer views a month. I don't make any money off of that. That is simply to give real people real answers and real truth. And it's to substantiate for you that I am who I say I am. That big box on my floor is I am who I say I am. Now, you can read story after story. You can hear about doctor after doctor. They can repeat the stories between hundreds of thousands of people because we love our stories. And storytelling is medicine. But today, in the world today, so many of you want proof. You want the proof, right? So, toxic brain could be anyone, but my toxic brain client is usually between 0 and 40. Again, it can be anyone. But 0 to 40, this person is typically born in 1979 or after, okay? This person was born inside of a woman who likely, inside of her, carried in her uterus, who likely had a deficit of essential trace elements, who likely had a strong existing thyroid issue, who likely had thick blood from toxins and inflammation, who likely had stagnant liver, who likely might have had leaky gut, who likely placed her babies in front of TVs and likely didn't have the connection with elders that we used to have because more and more they were apart, and elders began to die sooner and sooner and much more prematurely. A toxic brain is someone who came up on baby formula or very short amount of nursing on mama and got those antibodies that come through mama. They come through mama naturally, and baby and mama know when to cease nursing. There's not 6 months it's done, a year it's done, 2 years it's done. Mother and baby decide that, okay? Mother's milk is superior. I don't know why we don't have more mothers feeding, in a beautiful way, because the breast is to feed our young. It's sexually stimulating, but its first primary basis is to feed our young. They are mammary glands. There's glands again inside of the breast. And I'm going to give you a really nice nugget here. women that develop hypophagia, which means they don't have enough, insufficient, or no ability to make breast milk, have come through multiple mothers with thyroid imbalance, or they've been exposed to a great deal of radiation, okay? So the 0 to 40 age group, I see much more toxic brain. Multiple generations of people became very acclimated with, you need to go take an antidepressant. This is too much for me. You need to get on something. But certainly I also have 60s, 70s-year-old clients that are also on antidepressants. And because their doctor is the end-all authority and their doctor recommended, as is the case with a client last year, Wellbutrin and another antidepressant, 2 antidepressants, Klonopin, and a Parkinson's medication. And let's not forget, was also being injected with the flu vaccine. So a toxic brain is coming from a deficient mama, the food industry with all of its GMO and its food chemicals inside of it, neurotoxins and excitotoxins like MSG, nitrates, and what we call lunch meat, okay? Vaccines, whether you're pro or anti-vax, this doesn't matter. What I'm going to talk about on a toxic brain is that there is thimerosal, which is a mercury derivative. There is formaldehyde, which is an embalming agent. There is aluminum or aluminum salts, which creates the tremors that I see inside some of my clients. Young people are getting the tremors from some of their medications that are based with aluminum and excess sulfur. So we're also getting it from the environment. If you're living in a mercury hotspot like I am right now, you could be living on the high copper ground. You could be living on high iron ground. All of those things are important, okay? But also, we're looking at RF, which is radio frequency technology. Technology and the toxic brain go hand in hand. There's something that now we're not going to be able to separate out. We're only going to be able to deal with. And what we're dealing with is the need with the brain to create more of what's commonly referred to is neuroplasticity. And I'm going to go into that in just a moment here about the dendrites, the neurons, and the axons, et cetera, in a very basic way. This is not, I don't have 5 hours to do a dissertation. Okay, there's, in addition on the toxic brain to the RF technology, is also the frequency pulsing, which I began talking about over 15 years ago, which has been coming in through the smart meters. So it's pulsing you in the evening through the smart meter. If you don't know anything about smart meters, if it sounds a little too far-fetched for you, read some of the posts that I put on the Naturally with Karen page, like the one last night about including this necklace. This is a meteorite stone on the top here. See if you can see it. Okay. Let's go to number 10, the diseased and medicated brain. Are you picking up, give me a thumbs up if you're aware of a lot more people around you or yourself have kidney issues, whether you have a full-blown diagnosis or you've been warned that you've got some kidney issues to attend to, you're aware of someone at your daycare, your church, your school, coworkers that you have. More and more people. We have a barber here in town that just died of kidney disease. I had 2 clients last week on my table that have been diagnosed with kidney disease. I overhear people in the shop when people are getting their hair done where I rent professional space. I have a treatment room in the back where I have a table and some chairs and we sit down and do, coaching and wellness, or we do massage on the table. I only do the massage 2 or 3 days a week now. I've cut that way back over time. But a diseased and medicated brain is the reason why we have as many kidney issues as we do, okay? We have people that have really been trained to go to the convenience store and buy their jugs of cow milk, their Gatorades, energy drinks, iced tea, soda in the fountain. They're carrying their Pepsi, and especially they're carrying their Mountain Dew with the BVO, which is the brominated vegetable oil, okay? A diseased and a medicated brain is a brain that is suffering from inflammation. And you are probably all aware of something called shaken baby syndrome, where the baby, can go into anything. And I worked on a baby with shaken baby syndrome that was adopted into first a foster home, and then people adopted her permanently. I worked with her and on her for 4.5 years, once a week, a half an hour once a week on my table, doing energy work and helping to guide the parents with suggestions. And they brought her in, and the doctors and everyone were absolutely amazed that this little girl was still alive at age 5. Okay. So a diseased and medicated brain has inflammation. It's a person that's got a lot of excessive mucus. Mucus is building the cyst. It's building a lot of the mass inside of the brain. So is a deficit of trace elements or these essential amino acids and things like that. So when a person has a disease or a medicated brain, I start to see other issues like bacteria and heavy metals commingling. So now it becomes a much more complex issue where it's like we can't just have you go on an alkaline diet or just detoxify yourself. I need to go in there and I'm going to listen that maybe you have had some scans done by your doctor. Your doctor and I ideally want to work together so that I'm working the pieces that the doctor isn't working and doesn't have the time to work with you or doesn't have the knowledge to work with you on. I'm going to help you take the inflammation down, help you bust through and dissolve those cysts, help you get rid of those heavy metals and help to chelate those out on an oral basis and get you so that your body is absolutely optimum, which means sometimes I've got to take you down with some fasting once you're ready for it and it's totally safe. And you can check in with your doctor and any specialist doctors that you have so that we make sure that we're keeping you safe. Above and first and primary is that we do no harm, right? Okay. So a diseased and a medicated brain is got inflammation, mucus, bacteria, parasites, right? And I've got a book that I'm going to suggest for you that I bought in, I think, 2003. I was training with a company called Renew Life down in Florida. I called them on the phone and I said, you guys, I've been doing your cleanses, your Renew Life, Arise and Shine. No, Arise and Shine was one I did in the 80s. Cleanse Max. And I had done their Parasite Max. Excuse me, take a drink of my tea. And I said, I love your cleanses. I'd like to retail them at my physical shop. Here is around 2004. So I did their training and they said, we can actually do a 3-part series where you do an hour once a day and we'll teach you about the parasites because it's a really big deal. So this is around 2003, 2004. I was building my business, which opened in Minnesota, February the 1st. And they started teaching me about how people had brain issues due to the fact that certain parasites would build a nest in their brain. So if you want to write that book down, that book that they told me about at Renew Life is called Parasite Rex, like a Tyrannosaurus Rex, but it's called Parasite Rex. It's got unbelievable black and white images inside of it that show you how parasites will start to eat out the brain and build nests inside of your brain. Now, each and every one of you and me has parasites. We are symbiotic, just like the shark and the remora in the ocean. When I became a PADI certified scuba diver, one of the things that we talked about was how ocean animals, beings, right, amphibious beings, are often very symbiotic. So the remora would sit on the shark and eat off a lot of the crustaceans that would form on the top of the shark, right? And enable the shark to be able to swim much more easily and feel better. And the remora was being fed at the same time. So what you may not really understand right now is that if you've come up with baby formula like the toxic brain, the 0 to 40, but remember there's lots of others that are even elders that have a toxic brain. They're starting their day with coffee, a piece of toast, the newspaper, an antidepressant, and they're not getting out much. They're not getting much sun. They believed in the sunscreen mythology. You know, they believe in everything the doctor and the veterinarian and the psychiatrist and everyone tells them. Even though these are extremely intelligent people, it would be the same thing as me hiring someone to do a contractor to build my retreat center for medicine and me not understanding anything about the plumbing, the electrical. You know, they would tell me something and I would just say, well, okay, that sounds really good. That sounds official. So we're not dumb people. We're not putting anybody down. It's just that we have people like myself that devoted an entire lifetime at 58 this year to learn real medicine and to learn why things are happening. That's why I invited Elizabeth as far as the root tracker, that she's building a root tracker application. Okay. So the antidepressants, the SSRIs, which are selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors and selective norepinephrine reuptake inhibitors, right? And then there's the NDRIs. There's all these different types of anti-life pills so that you can suppress or change, allegedly, your brain chemistry. So we're getting ourselves into problems because more and more people feel like, well, I don't really have to do those changes. I can go to the doctor because they're innocent, right? They want to do the right thing. And they go and they take the antidepressant. And these are people that I work with later that honestly didn't know. They were taken for a ride. And now one of my clients, his words were amazing. He said, I feel lobotomized. Another client, about a year ago said, I just feel vacuous inside. I feel empty. Now, it's not going to be one or two coaching sessions that we get this fixed up. It's going to be a longer hand-holding journey because you became toxic in the brain through a very long journey of not knowing. That's why I ask about mom and dad and grandparents. And that's why when I wrote Detox and Heal Your Thyroid, I gave a special chapter, I'm revising that book right now, on multi-generational considerations. The doctor will just say, do you have cancer in your family? Do you have kidney disease in your family? Well, we have heart issues in our family. Well, sure, you have heart issues in your family because your family likely has brain and glandular and organ compromise due to your habits, the environment you lived on, and the status of mom when she gave birth to you. Okay. There's a difference between a family that's eating Doritos and Domino's and a family that's having a fresh salad every day. There's a difference between someone who goes in and gets the pneumonia, the shingles, and the flu shot, and the varicella vaccine, and the MMRs, and gets an extra dose because, and I've worked with someone like this, who their son really wanted to be on the football team, and he couldn't produce his vaccine, his shot records, right? So pretty soon, as we'll talk about in the section on mental health really quickly, he developed aluminum toxicity, and dad was coming to say, well, we're not going to do all this airy-fairy stuff. He needs to go to a psychiatrist. He needs to get a real doctor, not this Karen over here, this hippie or whatever the hell she is. Health coach, shaman, I don't believe in all that crap. I said, that's okay. Just give me a chance to show you. I don't want to see your 22-year-old son on medications for the rest of his life because now he's diagnosed with bipolar schizophrenic effect. That doesn't feel good to me, that our people are going to be on psychiatric drugs for the rest of their life and carry the stigma and have shortcomings in their life because they couldn't find someone like myself to show them the basic root cause. Okay, so these drugs create a diseased or a medicated brain that is also calling out for attention. Okay, number 11, let's keep moving. Opiate/opioid brain. When a person takes to the opioids, opioid is another word for what we knew was opiates, but now we have many analogs, meaning copycat drugs, that are essentially chemically similar and synthetic to heroin, fentanyl, and some of the other pills like Vicodin and Oxycontins and things like that. They're coming out of Chinese labs. They're coming through alternate sources, and people are able to ship some of them legally through the mail because they're not technically a scheduled narcotic. Now, why would these be so appealing to our people, and what would this be causing happening to our brain by way of our using these things? If you've worked in chemical dependency, I'm going to ask you to have a special ear open. If you've got someone in your life like I do, a close family member that's opioid addicted, it is an absolute hell ride if certain factors are present, okay? Opioids target the Li receptor sites. That's why if you've ever had any background or you're a CD person, chemical dependency, you know that we typically use a product called Narcan or naltrexone to pull the opiate off the receptor site. It's the Li receptor site. It pulls it off immediately and they come back, right? Okay, these are drugs, opioids, meaning all the pills that the doctor was dispensing like Oxycontin, Oxys, Vicodins, all these things, right? Heroin, snort, smoke, inject. Fentanyl, same thing, okay? Fentanyl is extremely much more powerful and deadly to someone who doesn't have an opioid tolerance. Fentanyl can kill someone, even a tiny amount of the powder, so please be careful. What do these opiate and opioids do? Give me a thumbs up if you're still listening, please. Okay? These opiates and opioids disrupt your endocrine. All of the glands, like your thyroid gland, that have to do with moving these hormones around in your body so that when you sleep at night, you can take DHEA and the other chemicals produced in your brain, and you can start to be healthful and feel good and feel joyful. Why does a person become self-medicating and then become an opioid abuser or have opiate substance abuse disorder in the medical world, right? Is because first, and this is my opinion, they had anxiety and depression and a leak or a loss of energy. So they're looking for energy. So if you don't have energy, if you're eating Domino's, if you're eating breads and bready sandwiches and lunch meats and lots of pizza and lots of cheese and goopy mucus and you've got a lot of inflammation, you're deficit in your trace minerals, you've got excessive bacteria, which is going to come in through eating cheese and cow products and yogurts and cheesecakes and all of that, your brain cannot function as it's geared to function, okay? Your brain is geared to do wonderful things for you, but it cannot function like it wants to, like it could, if you keep giving it inflammatory foods like GMO chips, Doritos, Fritos. You're going through and you're eating wheat burritos, okay? All right. So the opioid brain, the person who's using opioids, is going to develop an opioid-induced endocrinopathy. So a person using opioids is going to affect their thyroid function. It's going to affect their brain. Okay, and I could get really technical on that because I ordered some research paper written out of the University of Auckland, Australia from 1995, but that's a whole nother live stream. Okay, let's go to number 11. We're going to talk about the chemo brain. A lot of people choose to have chemotherapy because they've been told they have a mass in their brain. They've been told that they've got pituitary adenoma. Give me a thumbs up if you've ever heard of a pituitary adenoma. Could you do that for me? One person on this live stream right now, about 3 to 4 years ago, I told them, I placed my hands, these are receptors. You have receptor sites in your brain. You have receptors on your feet. You have receptors all over where you have orifices or phalanges, okay? And they're much more powerful than you were ever told. I cannot wait for the day when I have a retreat center where we'll be able to give people the medicine and people will be able to come and lay down in a simple setting that is quiet, holistic, peaceful. Stress is abated there. There's no stress there. And you're going to be able to take home a booklet with you, a little paper booklet, or ideally a paperless booklet that you'll be able to know what to do for yourself when you leave. So if you can only afford to come for a week, if you're going to be a benefactor or an angel investor in this retreat center on or offshore, this is my little plug here in between this, is that I am striving for, that I have put in a lifetime to do, that I dream about. That center will be there for you, okay? The chemo brain, think of it as a watery brain, a brain that has been targeted with poisonous biological warfare. Whether you have bone cancer, glandular cancer, a mass in your brain, or anything else, what's going on is that you have now got to deal with the poisons that were put inside of your body to, be something that's a benefit for you to destroy the cancer inside of you. Okay. Now, there's something I'm going to talk about on another one. Actually, I think I'll wait for that. But a chemo brain has become a watery brain and has become a disconnected brain. Why is it a disconnected brain? And I'm not putting people down that have had chemotherapy. What I'm saying is that once you inject a lot of those chemicals into the brain, you're no longer going to be able to have your brain fully connected with all the receptor sites. Okay? Let's go to number 12, the aged brain, and I put that in quotations because it's pretty important. Where are we at on time? Man, we're going a long time. You guys still with me? Okay, so the aged brain. Our lifespan today is something completely different from what is written about in the Bible. If you read the Bible like my grandmother read cover to cover in front of me as a young child, for many years I saw her reading the Bible cover to cover, she knew that inside of that Bible were crucial keys and prophecies and stories inside of the Bible that were so important to us. But you needed to be like a detective, and you needed to really tune in to what was really being said to you, okay? If you read stories about Noah and many of the disciples, you will find that they lived over 900 years. Now, either the Bible's a lie or the Bible's the truth. I tend to think of it as the truth in much of the Bible that I have been taught about in the early 1960s and 70s until about 1972. So now we think of someone as an elder or old if they're over 55. So I just got myself used to it saying I'm an elder. But I am your elder if you're younger than 57. I am an elder in a world that sees the aged brain as being between 70 and 95. I don't see that as the aged brain, except that we are rapidly and prematurely aging our brain by denying it the trace elements that we started off this live stream speaking about that are absolutely critical and essential for you. So yes, if you're someone that doesn't have enough copper, maybe you're like a lot of my clients because you have multiple generations of mom and grandma and great grandma having silver painted on their teeth, silver amalgam fillings, gold crowns and caps, lots of fluoride rinses. Even when you were pregnant and no one thought anything about it, I definitely did not allow those. But when I was 12, I had mercury amalgam fillings put in. So now I know that if I carried a child during that time, mercury vapor went through the maternal cord blood. So now can you see why when I work with a client through the screen or in person, all over the world, I worked with people in Africa, Australia, all over the United States, in Minnesota, certainly on the West Coast where a lot of people know of my work, Washington, Oregon, California. Can you see where this is much more efficient to gather about you and be the detective that I am to find out why it's happening in the first place, and then to take my 34 years as adult and all the same things I learned as a child and the many certifications and qualifications that I have, but the experience hands-on day in and day out for 16 years was crucial. The lifespan, the aged brain is something that, again, has become accepted and is relatively new, but it's not accurate. It's only accurate in the sense that we're launching 5G, that we have more vaccines with those chemicals in them, that we have less time to read and more time to connect to a device, that we're sitting more often, that we're not going outside because of all of the people around us that are thirsty for money to get these drugs, because we, in the last 150 years, particularly in the last 60 to 70 years, have said, we've got a pill for that. You're depressed. You can't get an erection. You're bleeding too heavy. Come on in. we'll give you a drug or we'll cut it out of you. My grandmother told me, please never trust being on medications. Please. And still, a couple of times in life, I got off track and I went, maybe she wasn't really quite as aware of how much medicine has come. But when we think about medicine, do we just think about Western allopathic medicine? I don't know, right? All right, so let's go down here. An aged brain, before we finish, is a brain that's had a loss of oxygen. You'll see on one of my Quora answers at quora.com under Karen Pringle, and if you follow me, I'll be able to do free events there to a huge amount of people on Quora. Loss of oxygen creates more of the white matter when they're scanning you. So you're getting these scans which are elevating your cancer rate by 50%, that they're injecting a very harmful dye inside of you, or you're going into the dark crystal, affectionately, magnet machine that actually completely changes and destabilizes your water, just no different, similar, but not much differently than you putting your food in a microwave that rearranges the molecules of the food and cooks it from the inside out. That's why the inside's really hot and the outside could still be kind of cool to the touch. Okay? So every time you need to know and you jump in these machines, you are exposing yourself. You're changing your oxygen, your water levels, you're changing the water inside of yourself, and you need to know this because it's the truth, okay? Now, through the hair testing, the HTMA, which is on the naturallywithkaren.com, profile number 2 is the one everybody needs unless you're a dog, and that's the canine, or you're a horse, that's the equine. I'm able to tell if you believe grandma has Alzheimer's just because people at 75 can get Alzheimer's, you're wrong. You're wrong. And grandma's going to suffer, and you're going to suffer because now you don't have your elders around you to guide you and protect you that could have been around you for hundreds of years. You see, just like the light bulb that's been obsoleted intentionally, and I picked up on this a long time ago when I read an article about a light bulb that used to last, is still going over 100 years old in a fire station. You can Google it and find it yourself. But it dawned on me at that time, hey, you know what? This seems kind of similar here, because if grandma said in the Bible, Noah lived over 900 years and others lived hundreds and hundreds of years quite well and had children, what's going on? We keep being told our lifespan is longer and we're living longer and we're living better. But to me, we're living more sick, ill, and toxic than we ever have before. So I know we can live better if we can have real medical centers and we can be respectful of allopathy, naturopathy, and medicine women like myself. There's a place for all of us, right? So there's a loss of oxygen, and then through the hair testing, I can look for aluminum. A lot of my clients had the shakes and started getting into dementia and other types of syndromes and symptoms, clinical symptoms, from the aluminum, the calculus that would show up on their health trends. So when you get a hair test, towards the end of the hair test, after it shows your nutritional elements, you think of those as your minerals like calcium, phosphorus, sulfur, sodium, magnesium. All of those are listed on there on a graph that shows they're too low or they're in the ideal range or they're high. So you can read the test yourself. It's nice to have me interpret it with you through the screen and give you some personal insights about what I see and some recommendations. So you can go buy some things for yourself through the health food store if you need to, the natural food store. So if there's excessive aluminum, arsenic, lead, uranium, cadmium, mercury, it's going to show up on the test, except for mercury is going to potentially stay hidden. Have a good day, Anthony. The mercury is going to potentially stay hidden if it's up in the brain and in the liver and it's not circulating actively through the body. Then we're going to mobilize and excrete chemicals, food chemicals, and retest you in 3 to 6 months to see the side-by-side before and after of your progress so you can see it for yourself. We'll know what we're doing. And then we can start to chelate out the mercury and the aluminum. I like to use 3 different things to chelate out aluminum depending on the person. So I can't just say I always use this or I always use that. But I do typically always use selenium when the client is ready, so I don't throw them into feeling worse than they've ever felt. Okay, so number 13, let's go on 13 here. We're going down the list here pretty good. I have many stories, including a young woman whose life was very compromised in ways that she wasn't able to parent her daughter, and the psychiatrist put her on lithium for about 12 years. I told her, I really honestly believe I can help you. And this is last year. She's an absolutely beautiful person. She's so open-minded and so intuitive. And when I was speaking with her, I said, I just really have a feeling based on everything you're sharing with me that your copper levels are probably really high. We did her hair test and her copper levels were super high, but not just that, there was a couple of other issues, but copper was it. And come to find out, as I asked her 3 or 4 questions in one of our coaching sessions, this is how powerful even one session can be. I said, what's around you? Where's the copper coming from? Let's figure it out. The 3rd question I gave her was, do you have an IUD? And she said, yeah, I got my first IUD 6 months from the time that she was put on the lithium, a copper IUD. You got to remember how sensitive your uterus is. That's where you're procreating life. Life is being built there in that uterus. That's powerful. The women's womb. Wait till my book is launched. Just wait. I've been waiting so long, and I've had to put everything aside for a little over 2 years, besides some of my work, because of having a close family member very opioid addicted. I'm not able to sit down and write in the way that I would like to. But it's completely outlined out. It's something I've had on my radar for quite a while. It's something I've lived. And it's something I want to put into your hands because we need it sooner than later. Look at what we're experiencing, okay? So I have many stories, thousands of hours a year, helping people, whether it was the lithium and the copper connection. Now, her family has an allopathic doctor in that family. And that doctor said, you're just always going to have schizophrenia. You're just always going to be crazy. How many women have ever heard of Frances Farmer, who was transorbital lobotomized because she was too powerful? She was too outspoken. How many women were relegated to the attic or insane asylums that were absolutely horrifying? If you look back at some of the religious torture, some of the witchcraft, 9 million, mostly women, but some men killed. We are the original healers. And we can do this in a very natural way again by reinstating this powerful medicine. Okay, let's go to number 14. When there's high iron levels in the brain, like I just touched about earlier, you may live on the Mesabi range. You may want to ask a few old timers, elders, ancients, wherever you live, what went on this ground where I live, where I am living right now after living at sea level in Santa Cruz and in the Bay Area for 42 years. 16 years now I'm living, on the Mesabi iron range. So that changes the whole compass in my brain, right? So now I tested probably about 10 people that had high iron here on the Mesabi iron range. 2 of those people were officially diagnosed with something. I'll have you write this down because it's pretty interesting and you're going to hear more and more of it. Hemochromatosis. Hemo is blood, right? Okay. And ISIS is a condition, an ISIS. And ISIS is a condition. So chroma, right? So blood, the chrome effect, atosis, right? What is happening with the blood is that doctors, allopathic doctors, are having people with hemochromatosis donate blood so that the hemoglobin levels can go down, right? The iron levels can go down because the body has way too much iron that it cannot use. That's why when I work with my clients, I say, I never, never, never want you to take iron tablets because they're very toxic. They're very harmful to the body, okay? So if you have hemochromatosis or you're heading towards it, which is, again, another diagnosis code, hemochromatosis, or the doctor tells you you have a rare blood disease, which is what I've also heard from a woman getting her hair done at Tranquility Day Spa where I rent space. And I overheard her speaking about how it was terrible that she was going to have to come up with $17,000, or her insurance company was going to have to come up with $17,000 a year for medications for this rare blood disease that she had. And I was in the area coming out to our general counter where we check out our clients from my treatment room. My client was still in the treatment room, going to walk out. And I said, would you rather do something else? Because I would love to work with you and I will help you so that you don't need even a fraction of those, if at all. But it's going to be a little bit of a journey. And she just looked at me like the deer in the headlights. Okay. So there's a high iron brain. And what happens with hemochromatosis eventually is that people start to lose their hair because, it changes the entire compass of the brain. So we're going on number 15, and this is a really super interesting part of your brain, okay? Number 15, I don't see anybody interacting. Is anybody there? Can you guys give me a thumbs up before I get started on the just about the last one here? Is anybody there? Can you give me the thumbs up or some love? Give me a heart. All right, give thanks, give thanks. Good to see you guys. The last one is about mental health in the brain, and this is a really super important segment for you to know. I want you to have hope. I want you to know that you have, that's fire snoring, that you have so many more options than just going to the psychiatrist. Just bless up, Marky. Good, thanks. Good to see you, Brother Marky there. I don't know how long you've been with us, Marky, but this is just about my last section here before we go into questions. And this one involves just about everyone that's listening. Whether you have a child with ODD, which is oppositional defiant disorder, in the DSM, the Diagnostic Service Manual, which is different than International Code of Disease for Health. The Diagnostic Service Manual deals with mental and behavioral health. Although what you're going to see in your lifetime is you're going to see a behavioral code. And you're already starting to see inside of many allopathic hospitals behavioral health units because they don't know what to do with 5G, food, mucus, GMO, environmental toxicity, and mothers birthing children with insufficient funding, the trace element funding that I talked about. Now, you won't know. You can have an idea, but you won't know unless you actually get the hair testing done. Children that have headaches, migraines, that seemed like they were perfectly fine, they were just close with you and happy and did everything and it was fun. And around the time that puberty starts to set in, and it could be in the world today with precocious puberty due to all of the food chemicals stored inside of mama for the many years before she got pregnant and conceived. Those don't just go away. They take years and years of detoxification, ideally, are passed along to babies. And when puberty sets in, whether it's precocious and it's extremely young at 8 or 9 or 10, or it's 11, 12, 13, or it's delayed due to some thyroid issues, which can also be the case, and it's 14, 15, 16, 17. There are male and female issues that make it different as well. What ends up happening is you don't have the ability to mobilize, make, secrete those hormones. And a child who is toxic brain who has mama who had toxic elements flowing through her maternal cord blood. And how did I figure this out? I didn't read this in a book. No one taught me this. I learned it the hard way. I survived it. And that means if I survived it, how many other mamas in Flint, Michigan, whose children were heavily saturated with lead, whose mamas of children were heavily saturated with lead, who, like a client of mine in New Jersey, had cadmium levels through the roof, and her anxiety was so bad she was damn near ready to be hospitalized. If you're joining us late, this is what I'm drinking. What does it say? Oh, honey chai turmeric vitality. They were on sale yesterday. Does this make sense to you? So with 3 young men in this area, they had some headaches. They had changes when puberty came in. No one ever told them that they were living within 30 miles of a paper mill, especially living in Esco, where my cousin, Terry Polo, died of a massive brain tumor, where her mother appeared crazy to everyone, where other family members became gender changed. What is happening to us, this part of this live stream that I'm not going to keep posted for long, is very important. My cousin died because she lived in Esco. I know of 6 different men, young men and older men, that have shot themselves with a gun, including my own uncle, Don Pringle. Because when toxicity is that high, when the copper or the zinc levels are that off, when the doctors have gotten done medicating them to the nth degree, when we are frequency pulsed with these smart meters, the stress and strain of our adrenals being exhausted from the fight or flight on a constant basis, the language, the behaviors of the 30 and under, you got to understand where they got it from. How can they have hope? And you might say, well, not in our family. My son's doing really well. He lives here. He's got a college education. Well, look around you, because I'm happy that your son is well. But what about all the others? And what about the toxic brain in particular that dovetails with this mental health section, who always lived on buttered noodles, wheat and cheese and meat pizza, energy drinks, didn't get out and walk much, except maybe to go hunting, to do a little hiking, go rafting. But I'm talking about the daily walking, the daily cleaning of the body, by creating peristalsis by the bottoms of the feet, wearing flexible shoes, and stimulating the gut points in the middle of the feet as you walk, okay? Cleaning out your colon that way. What's up, Karen? Good to see you. I'm speaking about a toxic brain combined now with medications, RF, 5G, stress, the pressures of conformity through the media, right? The pressures of self-sabotage, the low self-esteem, which is flowing through the schools, the institutions that people are sent off to. We send them off to prisons, we send them off to schools, and we hope for the best, and we want to think that they are what we've always known them to be. But they've always been an institution that creates conformity and uniformity, right? Bipolar, schizophrenia, sexual derangement, the furry, the pedophile, the psychotic, the personality disordered, I do not look at them as being bad luck, a mystery, a fluke, unless a fluke in the true sense, a parasitic liver fluke. Instead, I see them as having their basis and their origins with a sluggish thyroid, with birth trauma, okay, with stress hormones, having cortisol issues connected with your adrenal, so that HPA axis, again, the hypothalamic pituitary adrenal axis, makes it such that we become more selfish. So can you for a moment understand a child who came from a mother with lots of mercury toxicity, who got all the vaccines, whether you're pro or anti-vaccine, the chemicals in the vaccines are neurotoxic. No disputing it. Eating a toxic food industry full of GMO and school lunches because mama has the food program in place and gets the free lunch. And now we're eating greasy cheeseburgers, American processed food cheese on it, right? Wheat buns. And I want you to write down something else. I want you to write down one of the books that I read when it first came out, which is called The Wheat Belly. Okay, it's by a doctor. I know that a great many of you are never going to trust me with your health because I'm not a doctor. I'm not a naturopath. I don't want to be one. I spent my entire life to learn this. I did it from a place of passion. In my early 20s, I paid for my college. My parents didn't pay a dime. They didn't come to my graduation. They didn't value it. I paid for a physical subscription to the Lancet and the New England Journal of Medicine. We didn't have the internet then in the 80s, okay? And I was in Silicon Valley. I paid for those when the internet came on board, and I was working in a law firm as a senior paralegal and doing the coaching on the side and doing it with my clients, and had an independent paralegal business doing family law. The attorneys that I worked with were certified family law specialists, and when someone didn't have $10,000 down for a case, they said, well, you can always call her, but you have to call her at a separate number outside of the office. And it was lovely because, it set me up with doing work, and I would charge people $500 for their dissolution and $150 for a motion if they needed one. And I was able to write very persuasive motions. So I don't shy away from personal power, more than likely because of my grandmother, because of my road that I've walked, and because of working with the judges that people would shake in their boots, and the DA, and people that really intimidated other people. So when it came to, having direct conversation about things and advocating and standing up, including to the CEO of the Cloquet Memorial Hospital here in town, Rick Bauer, I said, that's criminal that those of us that are homeowners and business owners contributed to a multi-million-dollar expansion, and I'm not allowed to teach plant-based living. That you made sure that that wouldn't happen. So you see, what ends up happening to people like me that wanted to be who I am today when they were young is they gave up and they went and they got a job. Or they stayed, as the Paul Ness and Robert Lewis offered to pay for my law school, seeing that I had a good brain, sharp brain, right, that I was interested in learning. And I could have easily done that and went the route of made a lot of money and wielded a lot of power. You don't wield a lot of power if someone can't call you a doctor. And they don't necessarily always respect you because they can't really see what you're going to do. And the system today is created and geared in such a way that you want them to do it to you and for you. They'll give you a pill. They'll cut it out. They'll do the chemotherapy and blast you with biological warfare internally. But that's not the way that we heal. Or you'll go to someone really cute with bleached teeth who's in their 20s, 30s, or 40s, who really presents and is very entertaining, which I'm not. I'm headed close to 60, and I've walked a real path, and I've worked hard for people and myself to heal myself, including reversing ovarian cancer. And you'll do the alkaline diet or detox or buy the herbs that they're selling really quickly because they're very effective at what they're selling. But it's quite different to be someone who's a medicine person and trying to speak the truth. In fact, I've had clients that are, senior members of churches here locally, Lutheran churches and others. And I've said, you're hiring people that are making a great deal of money, about $5,000, to come from out of town and give a talk about why suicide rates are so high and what we can do about it. And as I sat through the talk, thankful that we had that, all I heard was remediating fluff. All I heard was, okay, we got to do better. We've got to do more prayer. We've got to, those are all important. But I had really key, crucial nuggets, and I could have used the income for all of the expenses I put out to learn. I've put out tens and tens of thousands of dollars in every day of my life. I've taken hundreds of people under my wing and given numerous free 14 courses through Carleton Community Education where maybe I make $50, $100, $150. At Whole Foods, I taught Thyroid Madness about the mental and emotional aspects of thyroid disease and imbalance. I made $50, and I put together an entire PowerPoint, which I'll probably turn into a course sometime soon. I need a promoter and I need a retreat center. I have real medicine. I would love for us to be able to have a retreat center to come to when we are not well, that I am running, that has a garden with living foods and sprouting foods and real chai made in the morning and real juices. And I have the energy to do it. I'd also like to eventually adopt some young children that are very young and grow them into the way of medicine while also acknowledging their gifts, their natural born tendencies, who they are elementally, what their strengths are, and help them, because otherwise we're just continuing to farm people and farm children and farm out drugs. So it's no wonder that our young people believe that there's a drug and a pill for everything, because that's what they were born into. Mama went off to work so she could make more money most of the time, not all the time. And I fought and fought and fought till I almost had a nervous breakdown because I never wanted my son to be left in stranger care of any kind. I wanted to be able to be totally in charge of what he was eating, because your food is like the gas you put in your car. You either put some good things in there and you give yourself energy, or you're going to run out of energy and end up with a toxic brain, and you are going to be ripe for the pickings for opiate or opioid addiction, for benzo addiction. Things like Klonopin are going to grab you. You'll remember when you were 14 and 15 how good that felt, and later you're going to be much more likely or predisposed to wanting to use something. So pituitary adenomas, I'm going to ask you to write that down. An adenoma is just a mass. Most of the time they're non-cancerous. They grow on the side of your pituitary gland in your brain. Why do you have cysts on your ovaries, in your brain, in your breasts, in your uterus, in your body? Why do 8 out of 10 people that I provide massage therapy for have a cystic, almost a necklace around their neck? I can feel it when I start to massage on high up on the breast up here and around the clavicle. I can feel the cysts. I can feel that people are headed for trouble. I can feel the gristle around the tops of their thighs when I run my fingers over their thighs, in massage therapy. Massage therapy is a sacred art form for me. It's not just slapping lotion on people and making them, feel like they're getting a pampering session. This is, a dimly lit room with candles, with beautiful music streaming in, with a warm towel cabinet, with stones. I asked the stones how to do the work. And first I laid them on people years ago. And now I find the right stone and I cup it in my hand because I've got a collection of them all in the bottom of the towel cabinet. And I am running them with my hands all down the body to the music and synchronizing with the client and training with the client, meaning coming into the same coherent heart field. And it's really important medicine. So I'm going to look and see if you have any questions. This would be the time now. questions about your brain, questions about massage, questions about maybe how I heal the brain. Sometimes before we get started on the questions, people feel extremely chemical sensitive. They just feel like they don't have a chance in hell to get better, but they do. And so one of the very first things that I can do with people is to start them off on food-based vitamin C, and so that they can really start to gain the strength to transition off some of these medications, because sometimes there are superfluous, meaning additional. Superfluous means additional medications that are given. They just start stacking what we call polypharmacy. So now you're on a blood pressure, a cholesterol, an anti-inflammatory, statin, you're on blank, 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 and all the way up. And now you're taking a sleeping medication, right? And in my world, since 1965, as a little girl, my grandmother said that there's no such thing for that. There's no medication. That's not medicine. Those are drugs that are changing the numbers on the test. They're changing what we call the values. So we're down to 7 people. We're ending. I'm really thankful that you joined me. I hope that you got something really great out of it. I hope that you also have a good understanding about what it is that I do. I can't speak about anyone else. This is not what health coaches do. This is not what naturopaths, integrative or functional doctors do. Please don't compare me. I do things very, very differently than just about any of the recognized, certificated, degreed people. I have my own unique way of doing things, combining really deep level intuitive intelligence alongside many, many decades of daily searching. So, fine, good for you. I nursed for 2 years and the whole, all right. Let's see here. Oh, Zach, I'm so sorry. Zach is sharing with us that he shot himself due to Xanax, Wellbutrin, Zoloft, and mirtazapine, propanol, gabapentin, Flexeril, and booze. Really sorry to hear that. Smart meters are terrible. They send RF through all the lines in your house. Ooh, see, now Dan would know because Dan's a contractor. Oh, and Seroquel. Okay, see what they're doing? Benzos are the devil. If you guys haven't read these comments, I hope that you do. And we're in an hour and 32 minutes, believe it or not. I'm okay. I flushed all 15 yesterday. Good for you. And oxys. Okay. Zach, you'll probably remember, if you're still on board here, you can let me know, but I had put my hands on the side of your head about 3 years ago and told you that there was a mass in there and that we could have shrunk that. We still can, through the use of some certain trace elements that work really well with that. Felicia, you ain't never lied. Give thanks, Felicia. Elizabeth, I can't wait to get your results too. Elizabeth, this has been my entire life. And, I think even when I go into the Lab IQ group, it's very difficult for people to understand what I'm sharing there, because we'll do this test and that test. And, I get it, we're selling tests, but before I start selling people, it's important to me that I actually really give them the real deal. Oh, Marky, you've been here for a while. Okay. Wheat Belly is a great book. And it's really difficult because, yes, we can't always get our partners to forego the wheat. That's for sure. I'm living in pizza land over here right now. Elizabeth, maybe you can leave a comment about having the smart meters removed, because I've called Minnesota Power on numerous occasions since 2006, and they laughed me off. I've even had a Sierra Club. I belonged to Sierra Club for a while. Yeah, CBD and THC for sleep. We can talk about that another time, but those are basically going into the cannabinoid receptor sites inside of the brain. And so just like I started off here with this poster that I had laminated and I was putting it in my treatment room. One thing that I really recommend on a consistent basis is a plant-based diet, and switching over from the coffees and the wheat and the mucus and all that kind of stuff, and switching over from the meat, even if it's grass-fed. But I understand, people are very they feel as if they feel better when they eat meat. And I think a lot of that is really based on familiarity. And being as someone that I haven't eaten meat for 34 years, any stressors I have in my life have been around the family member with the opioids. Otherwise, you'd see that I look pretty fresh most of the time. So THC and CBD are good for sleep. A lot of people actually just smoke, but smoking is really bad for the thyroid to have the hot air there. Yes. Okay, Kim. There's a lot of really wanting to push like the immortality, or you've got money, you can buy someone else's young blood. And the other part of the opioid addiction part and the brain is that when people need money, they're willing to go sell their plasma, which is a really, really, really negative thing to do to yourself. It's very self-destructive. So did you guys enjoy this? Did it feel like it was a good value for you? Do you have any other questions? So leaky gut, how do we know we're absorbing the nutrients? We're taking in, okay, right. So Dan, that's an awesome question. People are not going to know they're totally getting the nutrients. And in the interim, what I like to do when I work with clients is get them on making juice on a daily basis. If they're not willing to do juice, or just they say they can't afford or don't have a juicer, or they don't have the energy to get up and juice, then at the very least I have them make smoothies. And the reason is because if the gut is leaky, at least, and your digestive system is from the mouth to the anus, right? So with most people that have leaky gut, most people that have been medicated for too long, most people that have brain issues, just speaking about this whole general live stream, they're going to definitely have esophageal issues. In the first place, most people end up with cancer actually is in the esophagus and near the esophageal sphincter, because we're just shoving down copious amounts of food. And I often give the example, how would you have felt if I pulled up alongside you in my Subaru, not you, Dan, but another person, this is a generalized, and you've got your big monster truck, and you've got your monster drink in an aluminum can, and you're eating your brat, your hot dog, and you got your French fries, and you got your trap music blaring really loud, and you're about to go to a party that night, and all of us have been really young, and all of us have done things. Okay, I have, I'm sure you have, most of us have. Like that leaky gut was created over time through permeations, largely, if you read The Wheat Belly, and I really highly recommend it. You can just download it online at Amazon. I read it online through the Kindle, 10 something a month, and I can read unlimited books almost. Wheat is so abrasive that it's abrading your esophagus and your gut, and it's creating a huge problem for you. So now we're going to take in the juice or the blended drink so that your esophagus and your digestive system, before it gets all the way to the gut, is going to be able to send out some of those nutrients through your blood, if that makes sense. So when someone has an abraded esophagus and a gut, my go-to, a good part of the time, is to do a daily juice every day, and to get the camu and the food-based vitamin C and the probiotic. Depending on the person, if there's a lot of irritable bowel, which is a garbage can term for a collection of symptoms, that's what we want to do. So I will work, just so everyone's really crystal clear, I will work with brain tumors to active cases of AIDS, to newly diagnosed HIV, to stark levels of depression, to kidney disease, to autoimmune, lupus, Hashimoto's, Graves. It doesn't matter. A human body and a human spirit is a human spirit and a human body. And absolutely everything corresponds to natural and spirit law, period. Like exempting religion, politics, schools, institutions, industries, the whole bit. Absolutely everything responds to natural and spirit law, and everyone can be regenerated. Can we save their life? We can't always guarantee we can save their life. If you go to the majority of health coaches that are out there and the people that are slinging all kinds of good stuff and putting articles up, I will tell you that 9 out of 10 of those people have never actually healed people. You repeat their stories. Even Dr. Sebi, who I love dearly, right? And I could tell he knew what he was talking about. But there's a story floating around that he went to the Supreme Court and proved and produced 78 proofs, blood tests that he reversed active cases of AIDS, not HIV, but AIDS. Now, show me one person that's got a video online, a short homemade video, or lots of statements on there that says, I'm one of those 78 people that doctors say be cured of AIDS, right? So what I'm saying is I'll show you my bucket. In fact, I'll show it to you right now. Hang on a second here. Before I went totally computerized, this is my bucket. Can you see it? Let's see. Okay. This is my bucket of first time people that have come to me. Let's see if I can get the S one out here, okay? This is the S's alone. Okay, these are all health histories. This is the first time someone's ever come to me. And I'm going to share with you that I have video testimonials from the very few people that were willing to actually get on a video, because I don't feel like I look my best right now. I've been through hell and back with my close family member and opioid addiction, but you've got my face on the screen and it is what it is, okay? I think it's a testimony that I'm standing when someone is multiple overdosed and you're using Narcan, and you know, they put you under a great deal of stress. They don't want to, because they have a toxic brain and they've got toxic habits and they've got poisoning. And I did a hair test for this close family member and I found lead, arsenic, and aluminum and mercury. Okay. But do you think, and I know you know the answer to this question, so I'm going to put it out there for you. If you bring the water, does everyone always drink it? They don't, right? So if you say, hey, look, you've got pornography problems, you're oversexed, you're into this furry thing, you think it's cool to be a pedophile and to take young children, you're very gender confused, and all of those things could actually be totally remedied, right? We could have life like in a very comfortable way where we can start to trust and love and feel safe again, which is really the basis for lack of ease, which we call today dis-ease. We've been disrespected. We've been discounted. We've been disabled with anti-life pills, antibiotics, antidepressants, anti-this and anti-that, and get in our scanning machine. Come over here and pay me $1,500. If you can't afford to pay me, I make trades. I'm looking for promoters. I'm looking for people that really know how to get me into a retreat center, right? I'm looking for people to do repairs on my house. You know, I'm looking to get moved over to the Twin Cities. I need trades too. So I don't turn anybody away. If you can return the energy, or I'll make you a package deal. Hey, okay, so it would be $1,000 for 8. I'll give you a package deal for this month, this much, right? So if there's a retreat center, which I run, and I have an angel investor who says, I'll put up X amount of dollars and you give me an ROI, you give me a return on investment of whatever percent that we discuss, okay? And I give them a real true, I've done this many times in my life, a business plan, and we set it up in St. Paul, or we set it up in Costa Rica, or we set it up down in Georgia. I love warm weather, and I also love the Twin Cities, and I also love being offshore. I've traveled a lot. It will be a place that people can fly to for a package, week or 2 weeks, month or 2 months, whatever it is. So they've got peace. They've got me there preparing whatever their package includes. If they need to have, you know, just juice, smoothie, and probiotic or whatever, we put it together for them. But I have a very high level understanding of the order of operations so that we keep people safe first, because it's been on me and me alone. I didn't have a team of doctors or hospital protocol or anything else. I had to rely on me to do it. So I've got a testimonial on video for stage 3 kidney disease, lupus. Brian Marshall here is a pastor, 31 years of psoriasis. We reversed that in 6 sessions, just doing mind-body medicine. So where we can really showcase the courses that I have done and improve upon them and have a place for people to come, people that are going to fly in and be there for a week or 2 weeks or a month or whatever it is that they need just to kind of reuptake themselves a little bit. So that when they go home, they're like, okay, I know how to do this, you know, or I had a week of actual downtime that was so much more to me than going to Disney World right now because I'm sick and I'm not feeling good, you know. They can come to workshops about, you know, how to get thicker hair because that's really important to a lot of people, or how to have better eyesight, or how to avoid having hearing aids if you can possibly avoid it because you've got all the mechanics, but you've got mucus in the brain. So Dr. Sabi pointed out before he passed away that a lot of people that ended up with, you know, various brain issues had mucus in the brain. And I have found that through detoxification and fasting, people, and they're afraid to do it on their own. You got to remember that, you know, and they would like somewhere to go, that this is something that makes a tremendous difference. So how do you know you're getting the nutrients is, Dan, as you start to see a different color in the skin tone and the pigment. You start to see the cuticles and the ridges in the nails go away. I'm not sure why my car is that my car? Probably because it's -9. It is my car. How weird is that? That's probably saying, okay, Karen, you're done now. So I'm going to be doing some more live streams, and what I'm going to do is tag a lot of you, let you know so that you can look forward to them because you'll be able to learn. I'm going to ask you, if you really enjoyed this, to give it a thumbs up, or especially if you want to, you know, give me some love, give me a heart, and be aware that my road has not been an easy road. It's not been one that's been very financially lucrative. And yet I just kept pursuing and pursuing because it's absolutely my absolute passion. I get results for people. And yes, I can't fix you in one session. I really can't. It is a journey. But I put together the order of operations. I keep you apprised of what we're doing. I'm no bullshit. I'm no beat around the bush. I make everything simplified. I read tons of medical abstracts. I know how to do all the big words, but they're just not necessary. Not because people are stupid, but because they need to have real truth. Okay? Does anybody have, oh, let's see here. There might be another one. I'll put my reading glasses on. Facts, spirit law, period. Yes. Okay. Okay. Thank you so much. Heart of Love. I'm asking for help to get the retreat center. It's really time. And I want to help you. I want to be able to show you the medicine that's there, give you nuggets that you'll be able to have for yourself, let you know that my heart is genuine and sincere. And it's something that that I really wish that we had, because I see so many confused people on the lab group that I belong to, and I just want to go, oh, I can't even take my time. I just got to finish the books and do these live streams in my YouTube, because it's fruitless. It's like they can't understand me. I think they just keep talking about the this test and the that test and the new thing, and you know, it's like, they're going to test to death and they're never going to get around to healing. So, and the doctors are not going to support me. So just don't even think for a moment that they're going to. They're not. In fact, it's typically the put down. In fact, in the one group that I belong to, and I paid $1,500, I said, we really need to feed the thyroid. Well, you know, obviously there's no understanding. There's still actually a level of iodophobia happening. And that iodophobia is lucrative for a lot of doctors. And they're kind of under oath not to really say anything, especially if you're in AMA, American Medical Association. So let's stay flexible. Let's stay with a heart of love, and let's see what we can create together. All right. Thank you so much for joining me. All right. Have a great